Few people knew why Clive Davis was so determined to get rid of Barry White, but some insiders were aware of a shocking revelation Barry had uncovered over the years in the music industry. Behind his deep, mesmerizing voice and the romantic songs that became the soundtrack to countless love stories, Barry White had another defining trait: his courage. And that was precisely what Clive Davis hated the most. He didn't just see Barry as an exceptional talent, he saw him as a threat. But what was the dark secret that made Barry White a target in Clive Davis's eyes? Let's talk about it. Greed is a strange thing. Once you taste it, it consumes you from the inside. The music industry was already generating massive amounts of money, growing and expanding at a staggering rate. Yet, unlike other celebrities, Barry White had never planned to build a career in music. But once he stepped into that world, he knew that no level of fame would ever be worth selling his soul. He also refused to surrender his dignity to the industry's powerful moguls, like Clive Davis, who ruled the scene at the time. Barry constantly warned that greed was the biggest curse, leading many artists down a path of no return. He tried to caution his peers on multiple occasions, but few were willing to listen. Beyond the rumors about his hidden preferences, Clive Davis was also accused of having a peculiar obsession with the male artists signed under his label. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Like Diddy, Clive Davis was surrounded by a troubling mystery. Many artists who signed with him vanished under unexplained circumstances. Aware of the danger, Barry White made one of the boldest moves a black artist could make at the time. He created his own label and shook up the music industry. Barry wasn't just a singer or a songwriter. He wrote his own songs, produced them, and even appeared in films. He was a visionary entrepreneur ahead of his time, and he was rewarded for his courage. But after winning 2 Grammy Awards, everything changed. An unexpected event shattered his rise and silenced him, exactly as Clive Davis had intended. Born in Texas on September 12, 1944, Barry White was the son of Sad Marie Carter and Melvin White. However, his parents were never married. Melvin already had a wife, a secret Barry's mother only discovered later. When Barry learned the truth, he immediately dropped his mother's last name, Carter, from his birth certificate and took his father's name, White. But his story gets even more fascinating. Barry grew up in South Central Los Angeles, a neighborhood where the streets made the rules. The eldest of 2 children, he was inseparable from his younger brother Daryl. Together, they found themselves in dangerous situations multiple times, and were even arrested on several occasions. Daryl, on the other hand, developed a notorious reputation. He was sent to a juvenile detention center at just 8 years old, a harsh reality that only pulled him deeper into a cycle of violence. Unlike Barry, Daryl never managed to escape that life. He tragically lost his life in a gang-related altercation. Some say it all started over a mere $20 dispute. Regardless, this tragedy left a permanent mark on Barry White. Speaking about his brother, Barry once confided, "No one could truly understand the bond we shared. I spent years trying to figure out why he went down one path while I chose another." He reflected on this pain in his autobiography, Love Unlimited: Insights on Life and Love. In the book, Barry admitted that music had saved him from meeting the same tragic fate as his brother. But that turning point didn't happen immediately. Even after Daryl's death, Barry continued to flirt with danger. In 1960, at just 16 years old, he was arrested for stealing Cadillac tires. That reckless act landed him behind bars for 4 months. But it was in prison that his life took a dramatic turn. One day, as he sat in his cell, a song played on the radio, Elvis Presley's "It's Now or Never." At that precise moment, something shifted inside him. He realized he couldn't keep living this way. He had to choose, the streets or music. During an interview, he was asked what had motivated him to change his life. His response was clear. "I looked around and all I saw was misery. People trapped in a vicious cycle, doomed to repeat the same mistakes. I knew there had to be a better way to live. I had to make a choice, or I'd end up like them." Another defining moment came 2 years later, on the eve of his 18th birthday. That day also marked the start of his senior year in high school. But instead of going to class, Barry made a radical decision. He dropped out of school, crossed the city, and stood in front of the Capitol Records headquarters in Hollywood. For hours, he remained there, staring at the building, as if he could see his future unfolding before him. People believed Barry White had never learned to read or write music, yet his determination and relentless work ethic paved a path he had never imagined walking. But here's the truth. Even though Barry knew little about music theory at the time, he had grown up listening to his mother's classical music collection. Inspired by those compositions, he would sit at the piano she had bought him and play back the melodies he heard. Later, a rumor began circulating that Barry White had been the pianist on Jesse Belvin's song "Goodnight, My Love." The rumor spread mainly because Jesse Belvin and Barry lived in the same neighborhood. As for Barry himself, he first noticed a change in his voice at the age of 13. He once said, "When I was a child, I had a normal, high-pitched voice. Then, as a teenager, everything changed. My mother cried because she knew her little boy had become a man." His voice continued to deepen, and by the time he was 14, he realized that every time he spoke to his mother, they were both startled by how drastically it had transformed. "My voice really changed. One morning at 14, I woke up, spoke to my mother, and we both scared ourselves." Barry officially left gang life behind after serving time in prison for theft. At one point, he was even close to being accused of murder, but he was later cleared. According to him, 1960 marked the beginning of his music career, and he started by singing in various groups. He worked for several small independent labels in Los Angeles, but even before that, he had already released Too Far to Turn Around. Barry then took a risk by recording numerous singles under his own name in the early 1960s, accompanied by vocal groups like the Atlantics and the Majestics. He often said that his biggest musical influences were James Cleveland, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and Marvin Gaye. And much like Marvin Gaye, Barry White never had a harmonious relationship with his father. In 1965, Barry produced Feel All Right by the group the Bel Cantos, which was released under Downey Records in 1966. He followed up with Man Ain't Nothing and I Don't Need It. Unlike Clive Davis, Barry White wasn't just a singer, he was also a talent scout. In 1967, he discovered Felice Taylor and arranged her song I Feel Love Coming On, which quickly became a major hit in the UK. In 1969, Barry White signed with Forward Records, a division of Transcontinental Entertainment Corporation, as a producer. 3 years later, he formed his own female group, which he personally discovered and named Love Unlimited. This was a turning point in his career, a success comparable to that of the Supremes, the legendary girl group created by Berry Gordy under Motown Records. Berry Gordy played a crucial role in the music industry, transforming Motown Records into a powerhouse that produced icons such as Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, and the Supremes. Thanks to Motown, African American music broke into the mainstream and helped dismantle racial barriers. Meanwhile, Barry White was also making waves in the industry. In 1973, he created the Love Unlimited Orchestra, a 40-piece orchestra originally meant to back his female group. But it soon became clear that he had bigger ambitions. That same year, he released Love's Theme, an instrumental piece performed by the orchestra. The track soared to #1 on the Billboard pop charts. But Barry didn't stop there. By the mid-70s, he wanted to work with a new male solo artist. While recording demos for a singer, those around him suggested that he should perform the songs himself. After days of hesitation, Barry finally agreed, stepping behind the microphone as a solo artist for the first time. He went on to compose several more tracks, adding them to the existing ones to create a full album. His song I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby reached #1 on the Billboard R&B charts and #3 on the Billboard Pop charts, staying in the top 40 for weeks. After 6 years, Barry White left 20th Century Records in 1979 to launch his own label, Unlimited Gold, in partnership with CBS Columbia Records. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. His career was thriving, even as other record labels struggled. When asked how he managed to stay afloat, he responded, "Record labels. When I talk about people, I mean the executives. So many companies shut down because of piracy and music theft. How does a black man with a black-owned business survive? I'm not exempt from this piracy and bootlegging nightmare. The way I see it, when a man stops being satisfied with making a living and falls into greed, it always ends up destroying him." Throughout his career, Barry White maintained a loyal fan base that never wavered in its support. However, as the disco era came to an end, his success on the pop charts began to decline. Despite releasing several albums over the next 3 years, he never quite reached the same level of fame. Things worsened when Barry's venture label became a financial burden. He had only one option left: focus on touring before eventually shutting down the label. In 1991, Barry White's fortunes began to turn around. His album Put Me in Your Mix climbed the charts, and after a string of new releases, he was back on top, each album performing better than the last. He had no intention of slowing down. In 1994, he released The Icon Is Love, which reached #1 on the Billboard R&B Albums chart. His single Practice What You Preach became his first #1 hit on the Billboard R&B Singles chart in nearly 20 years. The album even earned a Grammy nomination for Best R&B Album. Barry White also collaborated with Tina Turner on a duet titled In Your Wildest Dreams. However, his final album was released in 1999, featuring the hit Staying Power. This song earned him 2 Grammy Awards: Best Male R&B Vocal Performance and Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance. But here's what's surprising. Singing wasn't Barry White's only talent. He also ventured into acting, playing the role of a bus driver in a 1995 commercial for Prodigy. He even lent his voice to TV shows like The Simpsons and Skin. Barry White always tried to warn young artists about the sacrifices and pitfalls of success in the music industry. One of those he tried to caution was Luther Vandross, who was signed by Clive Davis in 1981. With years of experience in the business, Barry White had a strong sense of the direction Clive Davis intended to take Luther. It was also widely rumored that Clive Davis secretly had an attraction to men. According to Clive, music was in Luther's DNA, and he wanted to turn him into a massive star. From the release of his debut solo album, Never Too Much, Luther Vandross quickly became a major figure in the music industry, but his success came at a price. Over time, rumors about his sexual orientation began to spread. He repeatedly denied these allegations, but after his passing, some of his close friends confirmed the speculation. At the same time, Luther Vandross's declining health only added to the pressure he was already facing. His medical issues, including complications from diabetes, eventually affected his ability to record and perform. In 2003, he suffered a stroke, which deeply worried his fans. Many also noticed drastic changes in his physical appearance, which had a significant impact on his mental health. Another battle Luther faced was his fluctuating weight, which made him extremely self-conscious. He struggled with low self-esteem, despite support from artists like Whitney Houston, who reminded him that his talent was what truly mattered to his fans. Unfortunately, that reassurance wasn't enough, and he passed away at the age of 54 due to health complications. As for Barry White, he passed away in 2004 at the age of 58 due to heart complications and weight-related issues. Meanwhile, Clive Davis, now approaching 100 years old, is still alive, and the whispers about him have never stopped. But what do you think? Do you believe Clive Davis played a role in the early deaths of Barry White and Luther Vandross in the early 2000s? Share your thoughts in the comments and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any celebrity stories.